President Rao, distinguished Chairman, Governing Council, faculty, parents, and PGP-19. I'm delighted to be here. It's truly an honor to be with all of you here today. It's a very, very special day for all of you. And I hope that tonight you do something completely insane so that you remember the day. You know, I clearly remember the day I graduated from my undergraduate school in Boston. I have no idea who my chief guest was. But I remember that evening like never before. It just seems like yesterday. I also remember my graduate school, the day that I graduated, the similar event that I was at. Again, no clue who spoke. But I didn't have too much fun because I was a graduate student. So I hope that as graduate students, and also the one PhD in the audience, I hope you guys just go completely insane. Now I realize there are a few restrictions in Ahmedabad for you to do that. But I'm sure all of you have figured that one out. So I'd like to start by congratulating all of you, PGP-19. Let's give them a big round of applause. I'd also like to congratulate the parents. You know, I remember when I graduated, you know, I was about your age. It was a very long, long time ago. You can tell from my hair. When I graduated, I only had one goal. That was it. I wanted to take care of my mother, who had taken care of me and my younger brother, and that was it. And I hope all of you feel the same way. The reason you're here, most of you, I hope, I'm assuming, is what your parents have done for you for a very, very long time. So let's give them a big round of applause. And finally, whether it's the one-year program, the two-year program, or the three-year program, I think the reason that you're here is because the distinguished faculty were nice to you. Let's give them a big round of applause. You know, I'm really delighted to be here. When President Rao reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like to come and do this?" I didn't even have to think for a nanosecond. And the reason is because several of the leaders who work on my team at Google actually came from this school. You know, I joined Google about 3 years ago, and I actually don't have a clue what marketing is, or what communications is, or what you guys have studied, or what you're going to do. I actually don't know. I haven't the faintest idea. So when I joined Google, since that, you know, one part of our business is in the media space, I had to learn very, very quickly. And there were several of my colleagues who were instrumental in my learning what media is, what is advertising, what is marketing. And several of those colleagues who I would say have really made a lasting impact on my learning came from MICA. And if you ever meet them, please do congratulate them. Praveen Sharma and Akhil Padman. One was probably, maybe 5-6 years ago, and maybe the other one was a decade ago. So the first thing that you should do is 5 or 10 years from now, if somebody from your company comes out to speak, they should talk about you. And that, I think, is really, really cool. So that's why I was almost instantly agreed to be here because I wanted to see what made Akhil, Perry, and about another dozen or so colleagues that I have who came from this institute so amazing. I still don't know what makes them so amazing, but I'm assuming every single one of you is as amazing as they are. So I'm very excited for you. You know, graduating from here in the year 2014 in India is a lot more exciting than when I graduated. I graduated from California about over 20 years ago. It was the early 1990s. And today is about 100 times more exciting than when I graduated. So some of you that are analytical might say, why? Well, here's why I think it's about 100 times more exciting than when I graduated. First, India today is the 9th largest economy in the world. When I left in the 80s from the region, I never thought I'd come back. Like, never. Why? Because if I wanted to do something, I had to get a license. By the way, guys, there was a regime called License Raj. If you wanted to get a phone, forget about it. If you want to buy a car, no chance. Today, India is the 9th largest economy in the world. And by the time most of you start managing businesses, which is about maybe 7 to 10 years from now, India's GDP will be larger than the United Kingdom. So don't take that rotational assignment in the UK. Because you will be going to a smaller market. By the year 2030, assuming India's GDP continues at the current trajectory of 5%, 5% GDP, it sucks, 5% no good. Assuming the GDP grows at 5%, by the year 2030, most of you will just about be hitting your stride in your professional careers. Right? You'll be managing bigger teams, managing bigger businesses. Some of you would have started your own companies, hopefully long before that. India's GDP will be larger than Japan. And that, PGP-19, is if India's GDP grows at 5%. We all hope, well, this SETI definitely hopes, that India's GDP will grow much faster than 5%. So I would say even after about the third year, when you come up, somebody comes up to you and says, hey, how about that rotation in Tokyo? Just say no thank you. Because you don't want to be working in a smaller market. So that's the first reason I'm actually about 100 times more excited. The second is the world is super connected today. You know, I was doing computer science and writing code at MIT. You know, it's amazing. It was 1991. The internet did not exist. When I graduated from Stanford, from Palo Alto, the internet did not exist. There was no internet the way we know it today. Today, there are 2.4 billion people in the internet. And by the time most of you get to your third rotation in the companies that you join, there'll be about 4 billion consumers on the internet. So now the reason that that's interesting is because when I graduated, I could not imagine being able to build a global business that reached 400, 500 million consumers over a period of 5 years without opening a single office outside of headquarters. I just couldn't imagine it. I didn't study business, by the way. I was an engineer. But my friends studied business, and they were the wise ones. And they would tell me, if you want to build a global business, you got to own officers, you got to hire people in those cities, you got to have distributors, etc., etc. What has happened, I don't know, I'm hoping all of you are thinking about this, is as the internet has grown from 500 million to 1 billion to 2 billion, now 2.4 billion and soon 3 billion, the ability to build a global business with a handful of employees over a period of 4 or 5 years is here. And that is extraordinarily exciting. The third reason I think graduating today as you are is about 100 times more interesting than when I did, was because the cost of doing everything has declined. You know, when I went to the US, if I wanted to call my mother, I couldn't afford to call my mother because I was on financial aid. God forbid, I couldn't afford to call my mother. So I used to write and send letters. This you cannot even ever imagine. Now people are actually writing these digital postcards. I'm like, why would you ever do that? That's gone. But today, you can pretty much do just about everything a whole heck of a lot cheaper than we did many, many years ago. And probably the last reason, and this is one at least half of this group will like, that it's 100 times more interesting to graduate from where you are today, is that the male to female ratio is a lot better than when I did. Come on, guys. Are you sitting in the back? What happened? They put them all in the back. It is. This 50-50 ratios, I think, is absolutely fantastic. So it's a very, very exciting time to be coming into the workforce and to start your professional careers. And what I'd like to do over the next little while is talk about two different paths that you can take. Congratulations, all of you are placed. So I think you should give yourselves a big round of applause. So there are two different parts. There are many different, by the way, all of you, I'm told, I got a briefing that you're going to do very, very exciting things, from agencies to creative work to consumer brands to technology companies and so on and so forth. But as you start your roles and as you begin this journey, there are fundamentally two different ways in which you can play the next few years of your lives. The one, you can aspire to build rocket ships. I do realize I'm not in an engineering school. So I don't mean literally build rocket ships. I know some of you are saying, is this guy clued on or what? I mean, did he use the wrong Google map? He ended up at the wrong school? No, I mean like build rocket ships. Big things, they move very fast. They take a long time to build, and when it works, it's magic. Or you can decide you'd like to ride on the sailboat. That's the other option. Sailboats. Very comfortable. Very relaxing. Virtually no risk, unless of course a tsunami hits you and then you're gone anyway. And quite frankly, doesn't rock much. It just keeps going. So, you could decide. And the question really is that I'd like you all to think about as you, assume you're going to take some time off and then start in the companies that you're starting in. Are you going to build rocket ships, or are you going to ride the sailboat? And I really do hope that you build rocket ships. Because whether you like it or not, all of you will live to be 100 years old. How many of you want to retire by the time you're 50? It's okay, raise your hands. Your parents can't see you anyway, they're sitting way at the back. Yeah, about a third of you want to retire at 50, right? How many of you want to retire at the age of 60? Yeah, about another 10%. 65? Yeah, okay. Oh, the rest of you, I should have asked, how many of you want to retire at 35? Yeah, there you go, fantastic. So now, you know, PGP 99, PGP 19, the news is you will live to be 100. And why? It's called genomics. There's a company in Hyderabad called Map My Genome. Tomorrow when you're feeling a little better, after you have the most memorable evening you've ever had, go online, order it, you'll get a little vial, you put a little saliva into it, you ship it to them, it'll come back, and it'll tell you what you need to do to live to be 100. That's it. That's all. What you need to do. So you will live to be 100. Now, the first reason you should not get on the sailboat is to sail for 75 years is going to be insanely boring. Right? It's just going to be nuts. You'll begin sailing for 75 years. However, if you got on the rocket ship, or you try to build rocket ships, you won't even feel the time go by. So now what do I mean by building rocket ships? And what does it mean as you start your careers? So I think the first thing about building rocket ships is thinking big, thinking very big, and being bold. Now hopefully this is something you've learned here, is how to think very big. Some of you will join to companies where the first thing you'll be told by some smart-ass brand manager, grow market share by 2%. Right? Is that what agencies do sometimes? Grow market share by 2%. You should tell them, look, I didn't come here to be on a sailboat. I'm going to live to be 100, you may not. But 2% is not going to do it. Think big, right? If it's a category, how are you going to gain double your share in 18 months? How are you going to create new categories? How are you going to create new industries? So that's the first thing about this rocket ship idea. Building rocket ships is about thinking big. Don't think small. By the way, most of you are trained to think small. You're trained to think small, right? I guess most of you learn about measurement and analytics and predictiveness and all of these other things that I learned from actually Perry and Akhil, because I don't know any of these things. Problem is, all of those things lead you to be incremental. So the question is, how are you going to think big and change the game? So that's the first thing about building a rocket ship. Rocket ships are big. Rocket ships are really big. And generally the bigger the better, because the further they can go. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, in the first few years, build specialized skills. You know, in business school, they teach you how to be generalist. I think it's the worst thing that can ever happen to a young person. I'm told here you can major in something. I don't know what majoring is. But make sure that in the next 2 or 3 years, your skill set is as good as the one PhD in the room. Because, by the way, he's never really going to do anything, right? He's going to teach you, actually, how to get better. That's what you're going to do. You are going to do something, and it's very, very valuable. So build specialized skills. Because the natural tendency you will have, and I think it's a very South Asian trait, will just get by. Right? You want to get by. Just want to get by. I mean, Jesus Christ, you work really hard for 2 years, you have this degree now, and why do I have to specialize more? Well, the reason you should specialize is, if you really want to build rocket ships are not built by MBAs, right? They don't do any part of building a rocket ship. Rocket ships are built by specialists. And even the business people who are involved in building a rocket ship actually know a lot about aerodynamics, about thermodynamics, and so on and so forth. Now, whatever you end up doing, ask yourself whether you're building very specialized skills. And if you're not, you're on the sailboat. It's fine. But remember, you're on the sailboat. And at the end, I'm going to tell you what happens to sailboats. Sailboats, no. Rocket ships, yes. So build specialized skills. The third thing about building a rocket ship, it takes a long time and it requires lots of persistence. None of you were born when the Apollo mission landed on the moon. None of you, right? Do you think the first Apollo mission got to the moon? Anybody? Do you think the second one did? The third one did? The fourth one? The fifth one? The sixth one? It takes a really long time. And it requires amazing amounts of persistence. The first instinct you'll have after you've spent about 12 months in your new job is to look for the next role. Well, I have news for you guys. You haven't done a damn thing in 12 months. You learned the company's name, you know your client, you kind of know the client's industry, and you kind of know how to put something together that really doesn't mean anything to anybody. The only reason you're still there is because you're new. That's the fact. So, persistence. It takes time to build rocket ships. And I really encourage all of you to take the time to build rocket ships. Don't get impatient after 12 or 18 months. Get impatient after you built the ship and you've launched the rocket. Because then you'll be like Perry and Akhil, and I will remember you. I don't remember any of my team members who rotated into a new role after 18 months. Because you know what? They didn't build rocket ships. Actually at Google, it's very difficult to be on a sailboat because the wind is too fast and it kind of blows them away. But, you're young, you're ambitious, you're impatient. Be impatient, but focus and deliver and build a rocket ship. So that's the third important thing about building rocket ships. It requires persistence and it takes a lot of time. By the way, please don't change more than 2 jobs in your first 10 years because we will definitely not hire you. Fact. Right? Because all of you, you're going to go, oh my God, you're not going to change jobs. And because you know what? You're the ultimate sailing captain. Right? 4 jobs, 10 years, sailing captain. Never ever going to build a rocket ship in your life. Never. Why? Because you don't have persistence. And rocket ships require persistence. The fourth thing about your first few years is, assuming you build rocket ships, you will have a few Apollo mission 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does that mean? It blows up in space. What do you mean? It blows up in space? Yep. When you try to build rocket ships, sometimes they blow up in space. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is if you haven't failed, like seriously failed, where your manager, your manager's manager, and your manager's manager's manager know how badly you failed, you're on a sailboat. Seriously. And this, for us, is very difficult to do. Because failing is not cool. Failing in our culture is bad. Well, all the amazing people in the world, every single one of them has failed more than they have succeeded. So what I'd like all of you to do is learn how to fail soon. Soon. I failed. I had a catastrophic, meteoric failure in my career about 10 years after I started at McKinsey. No, it was about 6 or 7 years after I started at McKinsey. I built a part of the internet practice and I was riding high. Nothing could go wrong. The year 2000 came by, the internet collapsed. And I had no practice left, none, zero. By then it was a little old to learn failure. I was devastated, I was destroyed. I couldn't get out of bed because I had hired hundreds of people and I didn't know what to do with them. But now looking back, I'm really glad that happened to me. I just wish it had happened to me earlier because I have now learned to love failure. And I hope that in the first few years, you fail big time. What does that mean, by the way? That means, first of all, you're trying to build the rocket. Don't crash the sailboat. Sailboats don't fail. Okay? Sailboats don't fail. Sailboat just keep sailing. I'll tell you at the end what happens to sailboats. So learn how to fail, because I think it's very, very important. The other thing about rocket ships, and this is very, very important, rocket ships are built by people who want to build rocket ships. People who are sailors and people on rocket ships don't really gel well together. You know why? Because they're not additive. Some of you will start in your companies and you will notice that you're on a sailboat. A fact. You will be in a company that's a sailboat. And everybody you see around you will be sailors, men and women. And they love cruising, baby. They just love cruising. And whenever it gets turbulent, they dock the boat. Yeah? You dock it. You don't stay out in the ocean when. So please, in the first year or two, if you're surrounded by sailors and you really want to build rocket ships, go find rocket ship builders. Because they tend to kind of congregate together. We don't hire sailors. Especially not the ones that want to go in a sailboat. We hire rocket ship builders. Because that's what we want to do. We want to build rocket ships. So be around people who want to build rocket ships. And by the way, this is only if you want to build rocket ships. I can see some of you saying, what the hell is he talking about? I don't want to build rocket ships. I know, I'm just talking about doing big things. The last thing you should keep in mind when you're building rocket ships is that technology changes and the skills that you will require changes. I'm always amazed at how I use absolutely nothing of what I learned in undergraduate and grad school. Like nothing. The functional skills that I learned, I don't use anymore. Why? Because I studied mechanical engineering and then industrial systems and so on and so forth. I don't use any of that anymore. The skills that you need to build the rocket ships change over time. The way rocket ships were built 10 years ago is not how rocket ships are built today. In fact, now I'll tell you why you shouldn't be in the sailboat. Because a machine will sail the boat. That is called automation and artificial intelligence. How many of you have heard of the driverless car? Anybody heard of the driverless car? Okay, good. Next time you're in California, let me know. If you want, you can drive around in it. Well, guess what? If I can make a driverless car, I mean, if Google can, many other companies will, sailboats for sure aren't going to need a crew. So there you go. You'll be sailing merrily along, and then all of a sudden, they won't need you anymore. Because fundamentally, it's not very hard to do. But even when it comes to rocket ships, technologies change, the skill sets change. And what I'd like all of you to think about is, on the one hand, you should focus on building specialized skills, but remember to keep an eye out on what's happening around you. Because the specialized skill definition changes over a period of time. How many of you are going into media planning? Media planning, a few of you, right? Read what has happened in China. That is going to happen in India in 3 to 4 years. So the skill set that you should be building the day you start, regardless of what your boss wants you to do or what your boss's boss wants you to do, is skills that you need in the future. So building that media plan for the media X, I shall name X unnamed. I'm a digital guy, by the way. Actually, that's already automated. Man, if we can build cars that will drive themselves, I think we can't figure out how to optimize media plans. So that's the last thing, right, about rocket ships, is build skill sets. And make sure that you're changing your skill sets. So those are really the only few thoughts that I had for you. Again, I'm very, very excited for all of you, because I think you're coming in to you're starting your professional careers at an incredibly, incredibly exciting time. It's never been this exciting. And it doesn't matter whether it's 5% growth or 6% growth, because the reality is every single one of you can be anywhere in the world. The only thing is, don't go to markets that will be small markets in the future. Don't. It's just not fun. And don't also go to markets that are declining, by the way. There are some markets that are declining. Don't go there.